Hey everybody, so in this video we are going to go over some basic definitions for geometry. So the first two things we're going to learn and talk about is how we find the area and perimeter of different shapes. So the first thing is we need to remind ourselves, and hopefully this is a review of what area and perimeter are. So if you want, you can take a moment and kind of pause the video and get down the definition and the visual here on your page in your notes. And then once you're done copying down the definitions, go ahead and start the video back up again so you can kind of hear the explanation. Okay, so perimeter of a shape is simply the distance around a shape. So you'll notice here that I kind of drew what looks like a square, but I put this arrow on it for you guys to see that I'm talking about the distance around a shape. So if you think about like a backyard, the fence that goes around the boundaries of a backyard, that's known as the perimeter of a backyard. If we have a triangle's perimeter is the distance of all three sides. If we want to find the perimeter of any shape, particularly of shapes that are called polygons, which are our typical squares and triangles and trapezoids and things like that, all we do is we add all of the sides together. So we get the lengths, the widths, the dimensions of all the sides of whatever shape it is that we're looking at, and we simply add them all together to find the perimeter of a shape. Now, depending on the shape, sometimes there's like more specific formulas, like a square, all of the sides are the same length. So instead of adding that side, plus itself 4 times, we could just do that side times 4. But essentially with any kind of polygon, we just add up all the sides. The area of a shape, particularly of a two-dimensional shape, so of a flat shape, is the space that's enclosed within the perimeter. So here you'll see I kind of have I guess it's more like a rectangle, not really a square. Area is all of this space that is enclosed within the rectangle. So if we go back to thinking about a backyard, all of the grass and all of the things in your backyard, kind of within the boundaries of the fence, that's called the area of your backyard. So with the triangle, that's the area in between all 3 sides of the triangular shape, and a trapezoid within all the 4 sides, etc. Before we start talking about how we calculate the area of different kinds of shapes, because it really depends on the shape, each different shape has a different formula we use to find this space, this area. It's important that we understand 2 other definitions. So at the bottom of this page, it looks like a lot, but it's mainly so you guys can see the different visuals for these things. We're going to talk about the height of a shape and the base of a shape. So go ahead and take another moment to pause the video and copy down the 2 definitions as well as the visuals. I think the visuals here are going to help you more than anything. So take a moment to pause and copy down the definitions. Okay, so when we're looking at a polygon shape, so polygons are like our squares, our rectangles, and so forth. Pretty much any shape aside from like a circle, which we are going to talk about circles, but height and base don't really apply to a circle. When we're talking about the height of a shape, particularly a 2-dimensional, a flat shape, okay, we are talking about how tall a shape is measured, essentially from like the top of the shape to the bottom of the shape. So we measure it by finding the top point or the top base. So in a triangle, like the visual here, triangles have a point typically up at the top because they're a 3-sided shape. But in a square or in a rectangle or in a trapezoid, I'm going to draw a little trapezoid over here so you can see, the top is not necessarily a point. But what we do is we measure from the top base, so maybe the top part of the shape or the top point, to the bottom. So in a trapezoid, we kind of measure it over here. Okay, we measure it in a perfectly straight line all the way down to what's known as the base of the shape or the bottom side of a shape. So in a triangle, from the top point to the bottom side. In a right triangle, it's from the top point also to the bottom side. And in what's called an obtuse triangle, we actually measure it kind of outside of the triangle. We measure it from the top point all the way to kind of where it's perpendicular to the base where it kind of forms a right angle. So that's where the height is in this kind of triangle. But it's always from the top point to the bottom point, a perfectly straight line that's perpendicular, or it makes a right angle with the base, the bottom of the shape. So in triangles, this is what it looks like. In a trapezoid, it's typically measured kind of from the top part of the shape, the top base, all the way down to what's called the bottom base. And we'll talk about that in another video, the parts of a trapezoid. But the base of a shape is the side of the shape that is typically viewed to be the bottom part of the shape. So the way that we're looking at it on the page, it's typically the side that's viewed as like on the bottom, like it would be level to the ground, or it would be level to the table if we had it like on a different kind of surface. So in a trapezoid, we have two bases technically. We have our bottom base and then our top base. And then in a triangle, it's typically the bottom, again, part of the triangle. So in these kind of triangles, you can see I labeled it up there. And a parallelogram, same thing. It's always the side of the shape that's typically viewed to be the bottom side of a shape. So height and base are going to come into play when we calculate the area of different shapes. So it's important that you know kind of where they're at in each shape. In the next video you guys watch, you'll see it a little bit more in action, but it's important that you understand the basic definition of these four things: perimeter, area, height, and base shape. So make sure you have all definitions down before moving on to the next step.